What has Diego Lopes learned? He's rematching Alexander Volkanovski this weekend, and it doesn't seem on the surface that he's learned much, even in his fantastic Jean Silva win. So we have to take some time and think about what can Diego Lopes do against the very tough Alexander Volkanovski, who is always a challenge to solve. Today I'm sitting down with Luke Thomas of Morning Combat, and we are discussing the main event of UFC 325. We're talking matchmaking, Paramount, X's and O's, the entire shebang. So you guys tune in, let's enjoy. All right, so Luke Thomas, the great Luke Thomas, is going to tell me how I'm going to sell my mortgage, get a second mortgage, and who to bet on at the very end of this. So yeah, keep in tune for that. Luke, thanks for joining me, man. How you doing today?
I'm doing well, Blaine. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, man. So we got some whiplash, dude. It's like UFC 324 now, 325, back-to-back fight weeks, especially after like how good Paddy, Pimblett, and Justin Gaethje ended up being, or how entertaining, I guess you should say. But the leading statement going into this fight, really, with Alexander Volkanovski and Diego Lopes, is that Diego Lopes doesn't deserve this title shot, which I find a little bit odd that people are calling for deserved and undeserved title shots. But then again, that's a tale older than time itself. So, like, I guess right off the jump, Luke, what do you think about the Diego Lopes rematch, straight for Volkanovski? What's your initial thoughts on that?
It's not too dissimilar from, well, it's a little different. I was gonna say it was not too dissimilar from how I felt heading into the Gaethje and Paddy fight, namely that should Arman have been in that fight? Yes.
Yeah.
Should there be an interim title up for it? That is obviously highly debatable. But like my argument at the time was just as a fight, just a Gaethje versus Paddy, is this a fun kind of fight? And I did think that it would be, and it certainly ended up being. And so I have something kind of similar to that in that sense that like there are a number of circumstances surrounding this bout. However, do I think that the bout we're going to get, there's like a reasonable probability that it could be fun? Yes. Additionally, I actually think that it puts an enormous amount of questions on what the actual upside of a guy like Diego Lopes can be. And we'll probably talk about that as we talk about some adjustments he has to make. However, I just don't think you can look at the nature of this matchmaking and conclude that, oh, this is booked because this guy did the most things necessary to re-earn a title shot. I just don't think that's accurate. I think what's actually happening, and again, you can like this or you can hate this, and there's going to be a diversity of opinion on this. I think the UFC straight out of the Paramount gate is trying to appeal to a different kind of MMA fan. And I think they're trying to make a premium on what would be maximally entertaining, or at least a reasonable chance of it. You certainly got that with last weekend's main event. And if you just look at the other choices that Volk had, whether it was Lerone Murphy, whether it was Movsar, the Lerone Murphy fight would have been very good, and Movsar too, but there's a strong possibility that they would have been, for a casual fan's interest level, a little dull. And I think that tends to explain the majority of what we have going on here.
So do you think it's more of a kind of like a YouTube hook? Hey, we got to capture the guys while it's free, while they see it as free. It's only $8.99. So do you think it's like an urgency to put out really good and really high-paced, entertaining fights, as opposed to what they generally always say, the best fight the best?
Well, this one kind of fudges the lines. So, for example, this will be Volkanovski hasn't competed since this last fight, but obviously we have Diego Lopes who did. He fought Jean Silva, and he had a thrilling contest with one of the most amazing finishes at a marquee event in Noche UFC. So he at least did some stuff to really reinsert himself. And what did he show you? He showed you that, like, on the ground he had punishing, obviously, jiu-jitsu, but more to that point, ground and pound, and then that back elbow as Jean Silva was coming in was phenomenal. Like, you can rely on this dude. When it's time to knuckle up, he's absolutely ready. Lerone Murphy just isn't that guy. That's not me endorsing the UFC's decision making. It's just trying to understand what's powering it. I think your point is right. They had a great debut. We can debate exactly how great it was, but it certainly was a strong debut for the UFC on Paramount. They are back-to-back weeks. They can't go in there and be like, well, this is for the the purity of the sport. I mean, they could, but they're just electing not to, right? And I think the debate should be, what's the right matchmaking long term, and is this going to be a long term thing? But if it's just a shot in the arm at the beginning of Paramount, I don't love the matchmaking, but I sort of understand where it might be coming from to an extent.
I've been feeling like it's been kind of trending this way for a while now too, man. Like, I don't know if you agree with this or not, but they don't say the best fight the best anymore. Like they're saying it certainly when TKO is trying to take over boxing, but you certainly don't hear them chest thump. Oh yeah, we're the best fighting the best because they're more in lines for entertainment. And there've been rumors like, oh, we're not signing this Russian guy because he's boring, or this, that, and the other. Then you got the Mofsar and the Lerone Murphy, two fighters that a lot of people see as boring. I enjoy them, but they're boring to the casual fan. And I think there's something to that to where they're kind of changing gears towards like a content mills. Like, how many highlights can we make? And with their machine, like you can make infinity.
I mean, I would really love to be in the room for about why they picked Diego and like to hear them hash it out. Because again, the win over Silva did a lot to restore his stock, in part because the Volk loss was Volk made a couple of errors in that fight. He did get dropped. I think was it the second or third round,
Yeah.
briefly. But in general, it was one-way traffic. It was 48-47, then two 49-46s. And so you have to ask yourself, like, how much did he really do with the Silva win to restore that? Certainly some. But I mean, you just have to understand, like the UFC is in the business now of building calendars. They have to build, there's to your point, content farm, content mill, whatever word you'd like to use. They're certainly in the content and media business. That's what they do. And they've got to stretch it out over 43 weeks. And in order to do that, especially when you're brand new on this kind of somewhat daring and ambitious plan to just get rid of pay-per-view. I mean, that's a kind of a big deal, that they're leaning into that and to see what it can do for their audience size and reinsertion into the mainstream after I think a little bit of slippage during the ESPN era, if I do say so myself. So you can sort of understand some of the competitive pressures that they might be under, but it's the same thing happening in content and media everywhere, in my opinion. If you look at Spotify, they just want to keep you using the app, so they'll feed you playlists and different ways in which they can just kind of hold you there, and they just want to span out the amount of time, whether or not you really become a huge fan of an artist or can really, delve deep into their work, or, you can look at any number of other things where the platform is trying to keep you, Instagram, social media, they just want you, they don't care how many seconds you watch each reel, they just want you watching on Instagram as much as possible. And so everyone's trying to scale out and stretch out that content. And I think in order to do that, it will change, and it has changed the product in ways both large and small. The question is, again, how long a real special focus on main event premium action, like they've kind of launched this Paramount era, how much longer will that continue? I guess we'll see.
Right. So you kind of touched on our next topic here. Why did Diego Lopes get this title shot? And I got the vibes kind of that it's kind of like a Dustin Poirier, Benoit Saint Denis type situation where you remember like all the talk was like Benoit Saint Denis is going to go in there, he's going to beat Dustin Poirier, then he's going to challenge Islam Makhachev. And when Dustin Poirier, after jumping the guillotine 20,000 times, he catches him and he knocks Benoit Saint Denis out. And then Dustin was granted the title shot. I kind of got the feeling that Jean Silva was promised a title shot if he beat Diego, and now it's like, oh well, Diego might have earned himself a title shot because we promised Jean Silva. How could it be one way and the other? But then again, like they're not necessarily known for being even-handed among fighters. But I do you feel like that could be a why maybe?
I definitely think having a huge performance like he did against Silva on granted that this Noche UFC was not like the last one, but
No, yeah,
nevertheless, it is one of, at least in terms of their fight nights this last year, it was a premium fight night. I do think we can say that safely.
right. I agree.
And he performed really big in an important main event on what I'm going to call, again, for the Fight Night franchise, a marquee event. That counts for a lot. I mean,
Yeah,
I recognize that counts for a lot. I really do. I just think it's kind of funny because I think that I will tell you that the fight does have some merit. It has huge questions about exactly how good Diego Lopes is in terms of his problem solving and understanding the needs that he has to, the issues he has to resolve in order to really excel, and whether he can do that. And that makes it for me somewhat interesting to watch this. But at the same time, I do recognize that in terms of earning this, we've kind of already discussed the Paramount side and everything. But to your point, dude, that was a big win. That was a really big win. And I want to be clear, I actually went back and I watched it this morning, and it was partly what I remembered, right? Where Diego kicked his ass on the ground for long stretches. But then, dude, Silva was coming back on the
he comes
feet,
back
both
in
at
that
the end of
second
round
round.
one.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
And the
then picked
thing
it
is,
up in the second.
you could put that spinning back elbow in the lead up to this fight. I mean, it's a content. That's their content now. They can use that to kind of promote the fight.
Yes. Yes, and look how well, and it's also like that was a bit of a redemption one because one more time, the talk coming out of UFC 314 when they first fought Volk
Hmm.
and Lopez was like, dude, Lopez got fucking outclassed. Like
Yeah.
he looked a little bit lesser then. So I do think it's also worth acknowledging just how restored. It's one thing if they put you on a whatever fight in the Apex, but they put him on a Noche card. It was the main event, and he massively delivered. I think that they were like, you know what, fuck it, this might just be our guy.
Yeah.
And then all the other reasons kind of came into play.
Yeah. Yeah. So what adjustments does he need to make? I got my own opinion on Diego Lopez and his technical abilities, but Alexander Volkanovski is a tricky fighter, man. It takes somebody super special. Islam Ilya, Max Holloway has the opportunity, or had the opportunity to actually beat him and present unique challenges to him. Can Diego, aside from like Volkanovski getting old, like that's not Diego Lopez. What can he do in this fight? Do you feel that would make this a more interesting fight to watch or for Diego Lopez?
I mean, to your point, this is to me. There's a few things that we could really talk about, but I just don't know. And I did a tape study on my Substack today to this effect. I just don't know how the conversation starts at any other place. First things first, cage cutting.
Yes,
Holy
yes,
Jesus. It was honestly at times it's a little painful to watch that fight because there
yeah,
are so many times. It's look, you've already got in Volkanovski, you called him tricky, no question about it. And part of the reason why he's tricky is he uses movement very effectively. And
very.
he had all this time to rotate in circles side to side and had uncontested, I want to use that word very specifically, uncontested return to center when almost whenever he wanted it. It was I could not believe. And then you look at the moments where they would happen. It's sometimes not really by design, but they would kind of happenstance where Diego would actually get Volkanovski behind the black line, and then he'd begin to unload on him. And even there were some issues where the guy's exiting to one direction and he's not intercepting with anything, which was kind of driving me insane. However, he at least landed a lot more in those circumstances, generally speaking, than when Volkanovski's able to low kick, jab, feint his way, and then circle out. And then, he's just doing that whole rinse, wash, repeat thing where he's going first, you're going second, but you're missing, and then he's going third on top of it. There is not the ability to win against Alexander Volkanovski if you cage cut. I still would favor Volkanovski, but that's a very competitive fight to me. But
Right.
without it, it goes from having a competitive chance to just a puncher's chance. That's it. That's the only thing you have. You've got a guy whose ability to draw you in as well as put you out is all predicated on movement, and you're letting him have it uncontested. Oh my God. It's just it is the most important thing that's imaginable. And the reason also why I bring that up, Blaine, is on top of that, if you go back and watch the Jean Silva fight, this is why another reason why Diego getting the call was a little strange. Again, a little strange because Silva doesn't do that. Silva is tricky. He shows you a lot of looks and he plays with timing, but he doesn't move side to side laterally like that. It's not what he doesn't turn you like that. And so the way in which and also, you think Volkanovski is going to come charging into a spinning back elbow? You know what I mean? Like, there's a certain way which he kind of fed into Diego's strengths and made him look good. And that's all good for Diego, but that's just not how Volkanovski fights. So the first thing, holy Jesus, before I say anything else, is the cage cutting. Surely that was your number one, yes?
Easily. I think that's the main thing. If he hasn't been working, I'll be honest with you, I'm not optimistic about it because he didn't show it against Jean Silva. Now, you don't really have to, but I do feel like if you can dictate the terms of engagement in the fight, that gives you kind of a leg up. And that's what Volkanovski, I think, did well in the first fight. He dictated when we're fighting and when you're following me around. And I think for Diego Lopez, aside from the footwork, I think another big part of this is going to be the ability to dictate the terms of engagement. Like when Volkanovski wants to go, hey, hold on, no, we're not fighting right now. But that's not Diego Lopez either. So I don't hold out much hope on this fight being that much different. If I'm being completely honest with you, Luke Thomas, I I think it'll be more of a Volkanovski looked a little slower this time, kind of like when Max Holloway fought him for a third time. Oh, he looks a little slower, but I still think he can get it done because of the limited capability, the limited game plan ability that Diego Lopes does have. Kind of like Song Yadong has this one layer to his game. Diego Lopes kind of only has a layer to his game plan. If you can prepare for that, you can really take over a fight. And who has better game planning really in this division than Volkanovski?
You know what's amazing to me is if you look, I was like, again, I was when I was rewatching the Lopez and Silva fight, I was like, my God, you look at his mount, for example, Lopez's mount, and you're like, oh my God, this mount is so good. And like his positioning is so good in the mount. And then on the feet, he's just like, there's like, it's like, okay, Diego, the amount of thought you have put into why positioning is important to hold mount. I need you to do that here standing. You know what I mean? Like, just do that here.
Little bit. That's all I need.
And I think it could transform his chances. At least it would make it would much more competitive as Volk has kind of have to. Because if you notice, like at the end of round 5, he's still chasing Volk, but he's maintaining a little bit closer distance, kind of like trying to walk him down a little bit.
Yeah.
And even that play made Volk, again, Volk could still move, but he was making him play hurry up offense a little bit, and I think had some success to that degree. I think he's going to have to take some punishment too. Like before, he was getting big shots that landed on him, but like, I mean, if you're going to have a high guard to walk someone down, then walk him fucking down. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like really bear down on him, especially for a guy who's really loose like that. I'm also going to say this too, like exiting shots, like where he'll have times where he'll funnel a guy off to his own left, and then he doesn't greet him with a body kick on the exit, where it's a high probability you're putting money in the bank. So some of the shot selection too, I think, is important. The thing I also I think is worth having a little bit of a discussion on is he got taken down very easily in the first round the first time, but then had like lights out takedown defense thereafter. I think his takedown defense is going to be really, really good this time. I would like to see him at least mix it up and threaten the back if at all possible. Threaten a takedown. You got him backed up. Volk in the first fight, we get him backed up behind the black line and then shoot a takedown, right? I'm not going to mess around in explosive mid-range. I'm just going to take you down and then, we're going to clinch break on my terms. Turn the tables on him. Make him work for it. Beat the wizard. Get him wrestled to his hands and really start to take his back. I think, Islam was able to do it. I'm not saying that.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
I'm not saying Diego's Islam. You know what I'm saying though?
Yeah. If you can make
there's at least a blueprint to follow.
Yeah, if you make him even just think about the takedown, like, oh wait, if he backs me up against here, I've got to be wary of the takedown too. Or maybe he shoots in open space. I don't really recall Diego being able to shoot in open space. That's a little beyond my knowledge. But regardless, like even if you make it look like you're trying to pick up a leg, now Volkanovski's thinking about the takedown. That's one more thing. That's one more layer he has to worry about. Even if you have no intention of getting it, like if you could just make him think about it, I think that's great. And we talk about that with strikers all the time. We're like, Alex Pereira, make them think about the takedown. It's simple as that. So, final reads. How will this fight be any different from the first? How will it be different from the first? What will be different? And what do you anticipate to be the same thing? It's a tough question because I don't see much different. I don't see the Jean Silva fight. I don't see much of a difference from the Diego Lopes there and what we saw in the first Volkanovski. Like, didn't seem like he learned from anything.
It just was not. It was a strong showcase, but not to make you think that like, oh, the Volk fight would go differently. I think as I mentioned, I've said it a few times. The first thing I say is, truly, this is a test of like who Diego is as somebody who understands like the very, very best guys between big camps and between like really big moments in their career. They problem solve. They genuinely reflect on what goes wrong, and they absolutely turn it into a strength.
Right.
And I think we're going to get a big test about Diego in that regard. But I think this is also true. I'm not saying that there's not enough amount of improvement that he can realistically make that, he still couldn't win. No, there are enough improvements available that I do think he can win. But even if he makes a lot of improvements, there's no doubt in my mind Volk was vastly the more skillful guy the first time, and even with Diego's improvements, he's going to be the more skillful guy this time. Even if he loses, he overall, like the things he can do and the way in which he manipulates opponents is well in excess of what Diego has shown. The only question is, can Diego just tightly control this guy and then make something happen?
Awesome. I love it. Luke, thanks for joining me, dude. Pitch your stuff, Substack, Morning Combat, all that.
Yeah, you can just follow. I mean, I'll keep it simple. I'm here on Substack, Luke Thomas on Substack, and so if you see it out there, consider becoming a subscriber. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks to everyone who listened to this, and thanks to Luke Thomas who came and spent some time with me. It was a pleasure and an honor. If you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe. Also, get at Luke's channel. It's very important that you can support our guys, right? And also check out my docuseries, Fight Finders, where I go around and discover the world of martial arts, be it in history, storytelling, and just X's and O's. Check it out, guys. Y'all gonna love it.